Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood in the opulent hotel lobby, my eyes fixed on the elevator doors. The anonymous tip I'd received earlier that day echoed in my mind, each word a dagger to my heart. I couldn't believe it, didn't want to believe it, but here I was, waiting to catch my wife in the act. The soft ding of the elevator made me flinch. I watched as Emily, my wife of 10 years, stepped out, her hand intertwined with that of Richard Drake. My blood boiled at the sight of him, the manipulative businessman known for his ruthless tactics. Now he was here with my wife, looking far too comfortable. They hadn't noticed me yet, too wrapped up in each other to see me standing there, fists clenched at my sides. I watched as Richard leaned in close, whispering something in Emily's ear that made her giggle. The sound of her laughter, once a melody to my ears, now felt like nails on a chalkboard. I couldn't take it anymore. "Emily," I called out, my voice echoing through the lobby. They both turned, startled. Emily's eyes widened in shock, while Richard's narrowed, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "David," Emily gasped, quickly dropping Richard's hand. "What are you doing here?" I strode towards them, anger fueling each step. "I think that's my question, Emily. What are you doing here?" "With him." Richard stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Emily. Now, David, let's not make a scene. This is hardly the place for a domestic dispute." His condescending tone pushed me over the edge. "A domestic dispute? Is that what you call sleeping with another man's wife?" Emily's face paled. "David, please, it's not what you think." "Really?" I spat. "Because it looks exactly like what I think." "How long has this been going on, Emily? Weeks? Months?" She flinched at my words, tears welling up in her eyes. "David, I can explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "How you've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back?" Richard placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, a gesture that made my blood boil even more. "I think we should take this conversation somewhere more private," he suggested, his voice smooth and controlled. I turned my attention to him, fury coursing through my veins. "Take your hands off my wife," I growled. He raised an eyebrow, that infuriating smirk still on his face. "Your wife? Funny, she didn't seem to be thinking much about you when she was with me." Something inside me snapped. Before I knew what I was doing, my fist connected with Richard's jaw. He stumbled backward, nearly falling over. "David!" Emily shrieked, rushing to Richard's side. The lobby erupted into chaos. Guests gasped and backed away, while hotel staff rushed towards us. I stood there, breathing heavily, my knuckles throbbing. Richard straightened up, rubbing his jaw. "You're going to regret that, Carter," he snarled. Two burly security guards appeared, grabbing my arms. "Sir, you need to come with us," one of them said firmly. I didn't resist as they led me away. I caught one last glimpse of Emily, her face a mix of shock, fear, and something else I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Regret? It didn't matter. The damage was done. As the security guards escorted me out of the hotel, I heard Richard's voice behind me. "I'll be pressing charges, Carter. You can count on that." The cool night air hit me as we stepped outside. One of the guards spoke into his radio, likely calling the police. I closed my eyes, the reality of what had just happened crashing down on me. How had it come to this? How had I not seen the signs? "Mr. Carter," one of the guards said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "the police will be here soon. Is there anyone you'd like us to call for you?" I thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, my assistant, Jessica Mitchell. She'll know what to do." As I waited for the police to arrive, I replayed the events of the past few weeks in my mind. The late nights at the office, the hushed phone conversations, the sudden interest in business dinners. It all made sense now, and I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. The sound of sirens in the distance pulled me from my thoughts. This was it. I was about to be arrested for assault. My wife was having an affair with one of the most ruthless businessmen in the city, and my world was crumbling around me. As the police car pulled up, I took a deep breath. This was just the beginning, I realized. The confrontation in the hotel lobby was only the first act in what was sure to be a long and painful drama. But as the officers approached me, I made a silent vow to myself. I would fight back. I would not let Richard Drake and my unfaithful wife destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. The officer reached for his handcuffs. "David Carter," he asked. I nodded, holding out my wrists. "That's me." As the cold metal closed around my wrists, I caught sight of Emily and Richard watching from the hotel entrance. Emily looked distraught, but Richard was smiling. In that moment, I knew this was far from over. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer began, but I barely heard him. My mind was already racing, planning my next move. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The harsh fluorescent lights of the police station hurt my eyes as I walked out, feeling drained and defeated. Jessica, my loyal assistant, stood by her car, worry etched on her face. "David, are you okay?" she asked as I approached. I shook my head. "Not really, Jess. Thanks for bailing me out." We got into her car, the silence heavy between us. As she started the engine, I finally spoke. "Emily's having an affair." Jessica's hands froze on the steering wheel. She turned to me, her eyes wide. "What? How do you know?" "I caught her. With Richard Drake, of all people." "Richard Drake? The businessman?" I nodded, the anger rising again. "The very same." I followed them to a hotel and confronted them in the lobby. Jessica winced. "Is that why you were arrested?" "I may have punched Richard." "Oh, David." I ran a hand through my hair, frustration bubbling up. I know. It was stupid. But seeing them together, I lost control." Jessica was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "David, there's something I need to tell you." I looked at her, a sense of dread washing over me. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. I overheard Emily talking about Richard a few weeks ago. I didn't know for sure, but I suspected something was going on. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You knew? And you didn't tell me?" "I'm so sorry, David. I wasn't sure, and I didn't know how to tell you. I was hoping I was wrong." I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes. "How long has this been going on, Jess? How long have I been a fool?" "You're not a fool, David. Emily's the one who—" My phone buzzed, interrupting her. I pulled it out, seeing a text from an unknown number, the same one that had tipped me off about the hotel. "David, be careful. Emily and Richard are planning their next move. Watch your back." I showed the message to Jessica, my heart racing. This is how I knew where to find them tonight. "Someone's been tipping me off." Jessica frowned. "Who could it be?" "I have no idea. But whoever it is, they seem to know a lot about what's going on." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down on us. Finally, Jessica spoke. "What are you going to do now, David?" I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "I don't know, Jess, but I can't let them get away with this. Whatever Emily and Richard are planning, I need to be ready." Jessica nodded, determination in her eyes. "I'm here for you, David. Whatever you need." As we drove away from the police station, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The confrontation at the hotel was just the first move in what was shaping up to be a dangerous game. The next few weeks were a blur of anger, betrayal, and mounting tension. Emily moved out, staying with Richard, of all people. I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind off the mess my personal life had become. But it didn't take long for things to get worse. I was in my office when Tom, my best friend and our company's tech expert, burst in. "David, we've got a problem," he said, his face grim. I looked up from my computer. "What's going on?" "Our clients are leaving. In droves." I stood up, alarm bells ringing in my head. "What? Why?" Tom ran a hand through his hair. "There are rumors circulating about your business ethics. Really nasty stuff." My stomach dropped. "Emily and Richard," I muttered. "You think they're behind this?" I nodded. "Has to be. They're trying to ruin me." Just then, Jessica rushed in, her face pale. "David, we've got another problem. The accounting department found some discrepancies. It looks like I've been embezzling money." I finished for her. She nodded, her eyes wide. How did you know? Because that's exactly what Emily and Richard want it to look like. Tom swore under his breath. This is serious, David. We need to do something. I paced the room, my mind racing. We need help. Professional help. I picked up my phone, dialing a number I'd been holding onto for emergencies. Michael Foster Investigations. How can I help you? Mr. Foster? This is David Carter. I need your services. As I explained the situation to Michael, my other line beeped. An unknown number. The same one that had been texting me. Excuse me, Mr. Foster. I need to take this call. I'll be in touch soon to discuss details. I switched lines. Hello? Mr. Carter? This is Samantha Turner. The name didn't ring a bell. I'm sorry, do I know you? No, but I know all about you. And about Richard Drake. I'm his ex-wife. My breath caught in my throat. You're the one who's been sending me the anonymous tips. Yes. I'm sorry for the cloak and dagger routine, but I needed to be sure I could trust you. Why are you helping me? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Because I know what Richard is capable of. He did the same thing to me, Mr. Carter. He ruined my life, my business. I can't let him do it to someone else. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you know? Everything. And I want to help you expose him. Will you meet with me? I looked at Tom and Jessica, who were watching me with concern. Yes. Tell me when and where. As I hung up, a knock on my office door made us all jump. Lisa, Emily's sister, walked in, her face a mask of fury. David, we need to talk, she said, her voice tight with anger. I nodded, gesturing for her to sit. What's going on, Lisa? She shook her head. I can't believe what Emily's doing. I tried to talk to her, but she won't listen. She keeps saying she felt trapped, neglected. But this? Ruining your business? It's gone too far. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. At least someone in Emily's family was on my side. Thank you, Lisa. You have no idea how much that means to me. She reached out, squeezing my hand. Your family, David. And what Emily and Richard are doing is wrong. I'm here to help, whatever you need. I looked around at the faces in my office. Tom, my best friend. Jessica, my loyal assistant. Lisa, standing by me despite her sister's actions. And now Samantha Turner, a potential ally in the fight against Richard. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. All right, I said, standing up. Here's what we're going to do. The conference room buzzed with tension as I paced back and forth, waiting for Michael Foster to arrive. Jessica sat at the table, furiously typing on her laptop, while Tom fiddled with some gadget he'd brought along. Any luck with those financial records, Jess? I asked, pausing my pacing for a moment. She shook her head, frustration clear in her voice. Not yet. Whoever tampered with these accounts knew what they were doing. It's going to take time to untangle this mess. Tom looked up from his device. I might be able to help with that. I've been working on a new algorithm that could. A knock at the door interrupted him. Michael Foster, the private investigator I'd hired, walked in, his face serious. Mr. Carter, he said, extending his hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. I shook his hand firmly. So do I, Mr. Foster. Thank you for coming so quickly. We all took our seats around the table, and I began to explain the situation. So, you see, Mr. Foster, it's not just about the affair anymore. Richard Drake and my wife are actively trying to ruin me. Michael nodded, his expression grim. I've done some preliminary digging into Mr. Drake's background. It seems this isn't the first time he's been involved in something like this. That caught my attention. What do you mean? Richard Drake has a history of sabotaging his business rivals. He's never been caught, mind you, but there's a pattern. Businesses failing, reputations ruined, all coincidentally after they've crossed paths with Drake. Tom leaned forward. So you're saying he's done this before? Michael nodded. Multiple times, by the looks of it. He's careful, though. Never leaves a trace. I felt a mix of anger and vindication. We need concrete evidence. Something that proves what he's doing. Jessica spoke up. I think I might have found something. There are discrepancies in our company accounts. At first, I thought it was just sloppy bookkeeping, but now you think it's deliberate, I finished for her. She nodded. It's subtle, but it's there. Someone's been manipulating the numbers to make it look like you've been embezzling funds. Michael leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. That's a start. But we'll need more than that to bring Drake down. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Lisa. David? I need to talk to you. It's about Emily. I put the phone on speaker. Go ahead, Lisa. You're on with me, Jessica, Tom, and our private investigator. There was a pause, then Lisa's voice came through, tight with emotion. I confronted Emily about what she's doing. It didn't go well. What happened? I asked, dreading the answer. She tried to justify it all, said she felt neglected, trapped in the marriage. But David, the thing she's planning with Richard, it's awful. She's not the sister I thought I knew. The room fell silent as we absorbed Lisa's words. Finally, Michael spoke. Ms. Roberts, would you be willing to make a statement about what your sister told you? It could be crucial evidence. Of course, Lisa replied without hesitation. I'll do whatever it takes to stop this. As we wrapped up the call with Lisa, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Anger at Emily and Richard, gratitude for the loyal friends standing by me, and a growing determination to fight back. All right, I said, looking around the room. We know what we're up against now. Richard Drake has done this before, and he's got my wife on his side. But we've got something he doesn't. What's that? Tom asked. I smiled grimly. Us. A team of people he underestimated. Now, let's get to work and show him why that was a big mistake. As we dove into our respective tasks, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come, and I needed to be ready for whatever Richard and Emily threw at me next. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. We worked tirelessly, gathering evidence and formulating a plan to expose Richard and Emily. It all came to a head one evening as we gathered in my living room, the coffee table covered in documents and laptops. All right, team, I said, looking around at the determined faces. What have we got? Tom spoke up first, his eyes glinting with excitement. I've managed to hack into Richard's accounts. You won't believe what I found. Let's hear it, I urged. Emails, financial records, the whole 9 yards. This guy's been busy. He's not just targeting you, David. He's got his fingers in multiple pies. Jessica leaned forward. How does this help us? Tom grinned. Because now we have proof. Concrete, irrefutable proof of his schemes. I felt a surge of hope. That's fantastic, Tom. But how do we use it? Samantha, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. The corporate gala. It's the perfect opportunity to expose them both. We all turned to look at her. Go on, I encouraged. Think about it. All the major players in the business world will be there. The media, too. If we present our evidence there, Richard won't be able to sweep it under the rug. Michael nodded slowly. It's risky, but it could work. We need to be careful, though. Richard's not going to go down without a fight. I stood up, pacing the room as I thought it through. Okay, let's break this down. Tom, you've got the digital evidence. Jessica, you've got the financial records showing the tampering. Michael, you've gathered evidence of Richard's past crimes. And Samantha, you've got insider knowledge of how Richard operates. Don't forget Lisa, Jessica added. Her testimony about Emily's involvement could be crucial. I nodded. Right. So how do we put all this together? Tom raised his hand. I could put together a presentation, something visual that lays out all the evidence clearly. Good, I said. But we need something more. Something that Richard can't deny. Samantha leaned forward, a glint in her eye. What if we could get him to confess? On record? The room fell silent as we all considered this. How? Jessica asked. A bug, Michael suggested. If we could plant a listening device in Richard's office. I snapped my fingers. That's it. Jessica, you could arrange a meeting with Richard under the guise of discussing the company's future. While you're there, you plant the bug. Jessica nodded, determination in her eyes. I can do that. It's risky, Michael warned. If you get caught. I won't, Jessica said firmly. I looked around the room, feeling a surge of gratitude for these people who were risking so much to help me. Thank you, all of you. I couldn't do this without you. Samantha stood up. There's one more thing we need to do. We need to leak some information to the press. Create a buzz around Richard's activities before the gala. I raised an eyebrow. Won't that tip him off? She shook her head. Not if we're careful. We leak just enough to get people talking, but not enough for him to know what's coming. I nodded slowly. All right, let's do it. As we finalized our plans, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. This was it, our chance to turn the tables on Richard and Emily, to expose their deceit and save my company. Remember, I said as we wrapped up the meeting, we only get one shot at this. Let's make it count. As everyone filed out, each with their assigned tasks, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Richard and Emily were plotting against me. But little did they know, we were one step ahead. The game was on, and this time, I intended to win. The day of the corporate gala was approaching fast, and the tension in the air was palpable. I sat in my office, going over the final details of our plan when there was a knock at my door. Come in, I called out. To my surprise, it was Lisa who walked in, her face a mask of concern. David, we need to talk, she said, closing the door behind her. I gestured for her to sit. What's wrong, Lisa? She took a deep breath. It's Emily. I think she might be having second thoughts about all this. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? I spoke to her yesterday. She seemed conflicted, like she's not sure she wants to go through with whatever Richard has planned. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. Did she say anything specific? Lisa shook her head. No, but I could tell. She's my sister, David. I know when something's bothering her. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling a mix of emotions. Do you think there's a chance she might come clean? I don't know, Lisa admitted, but I thought you should know. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Jessica. David, we have a problem. Can you come to the conference room? I'll be right there, I said, hanging up. I turned to Lisa. Thank you for telling me this. We'll figure out what to do about Emily. When I reached the conference room, I found Jessica, Tom, and Samantha huddled around a laptop. Their faces were grim, and the tension in the air was palpable. What's going on? I asked, approaching the group. Tom looked up, his eyes wide. We've got a problem, David. A big one. Jessica turned the laptop towards me. Look at this. I leaned in, scanning the screen. It was a news article, just published an hour ago. The headline made my stomach drop. Tech mogul David Carter accused of corporate espionage. What the hell is this? I muttered, scrolling through the article. Samantha spoke up, her voice tight. It seems Richard got wind of our plan. He's trying to discredit you before we can expose him. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the pressure mounting. How did he find out? We're not sure, Jessica said. But this article, it's full of half-truths and outright lies. It's painting you as the villain, David. Tom nodded. And it's gaining traction. Social media is already buzzing with it. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Okay, we need to adjust our plan. This changes things. Just then, my phone rang. It was Emily. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Emily? Her voice came through, shaky and uncertain. David, we need to talk. Can you meet me? I glanced at the others, who were watching me intently. Why now, Emily? What's going on? There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm having doubts, David, about everything. Please, can we meet? I covered the phone and whispered to the others. It's Emily. She wants to meet. Says she's having doubts. Samantha frowned. It could be a trap. Jessica nodded in agreement. Richard might be using her to lure you out. I uncovered the phone. Emily, I'm not sure that's a good idea right now. David, please, she pleaded. I know I've hurt you, but I need to talk to you. Alone. I sighed, weighing my options. Finally, I made a decision. All right. Where and when? We arranged to meet at a small cafe in an hour. As I hung up, I turned to the others. I'm going to meet her, I said firmly. Tom stood up. David, are you sure that's wise? I nodded. I have to know what she has to say, but I want you all to be ready. If this is a trap, we need to be prepared. Samantha leaned forward. What about the gala? It's tomorrow night. We need to be ready for that too. We will be, I assured her. Tom, keep working on that presentation. Jessica, I want you to draft a statement responding to this article. Samantha, reach out to your media contacts. We need to control the narrative. As they nodded in agreement, I grabbed my jacket. I'll be back soon. And whatever happens with Emily, we're going ahead with the plan. It's time to end this, once and for all. I left the conference room, my mind racing. As I stepped into the elevator, I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting with Emily could change everything. For better or worse, I was about to find out. The cafe was quiet when I arrived, just a few patrons scattered around. I spotted Emily in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. As I approached, she looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and tired. David, she said softly as I sat down across from her. Thank you for coming. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. You said you wanted to talk. So talk. She took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot about what I've done, about the choices I've made. And I'm not sure I can go through with it anymore. Go through with what, exactly? I pressed. Emily's eyes filled with tears. All of it. The lies, the sabotage. David, I never meant for it to go this far. I leaned back, studying her face. Then why did you let it, Emily? Why did you betray me like this? She wiped at her eyes. I felt trapped, David. Neglected. When Richard came along, he made me feel alive again. But now I see what kind of man he really is. And what kind of man is that? I asked, my voice hard. A manipulator, she whispered. A liar. He's using me, David, just like he's used others before. I felt a mix of anger and pity washing over me. So what do you want from me, Emily? Forgiveness? She shook her head. No, I don't expect that. I want to make things right. I want to help you stop him. I raised an eyebrow. How do I know this isn't just another trick? Another part of Richard's plan? Emily reached across the table, her hand hovering over mine but not quite touching. I know I've given you every reason to doubt me, but I'm telling you the truth now, David. I want out. I pulled my hand back, my mind racing. If you're serious about this, Emily, then you need to come clean. About everything. She nodded, her face pale but determined. I will. I'll tell you everything I know about Richard's plans. As Emily began to speak, detailing Richard's schemes and manipulations, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief at finally knowing the truth, anger at the betrayal, and a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could put an end to this nightmare. But as I listened, a nagging doubt remained. Could I really trust Emily? Or was this just another layer of deception in Richard's elaborate game? As the sun began to set outside the cafe window, I knew one thing for certain. The next 24 hours would determine everything. The gala was approaching, and with it, our chance to expose Richard once and for all. Whatever Emily's true motives, whatever Richard had planned, I was ready. The final act was about to begin, and this time, I intended to write the ending. The night of the gala arrived, bringing with it a storm of nerves and anticipation. I adjusted my tie in the mirror, trying to calm my racing heart. You ready for this? Tom asked, appearing behind me. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Is everything set? He nodded. Presentations locked and loaded. Jessica's got the media primed and ready. Samantha's working the room as we speak. And Emily? Tom's expression turned serious. She's here. Arrived with Richard about 10 minutes ago. I clenched my jaw. Despite Emily's apparent change of heart at our meeting, I still wasn't sure if I could trust her. Keep an eye on her, I said. If this is a double cross, we've got it covered, Tom assured me. Now come on, it's showtime. We made our way to the main hall. The room was buzzing with conversation, filled with the city's business elite. I spotted Richard across the room, champagne in hand, laughing with a group of investors. Emily stood beside him, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Jessica appeared at my elbow. David, the reporter from the Tribune, is here. She wants a statement about the corporate espionage accusations. I nodded. Let's give her one. As we approached the reporter, I could feel Richard's eyes on me. "Mr. Carter," the reporter began, "care to comment on the recent allegations against you?" I smiled, projecting confidence I didn't entirely feel. "I'm glad you asked. Those allegations are not just false, they're a smokescreen. And tonight, I intend to clear the air once and for all." The reporter's eyes widened. "Are you saying you have evidence to refute these claims?" "I'm saying I have evidence that will shake this room to its core. Stay tuned." As the reporter hurried off to file her story, Samantha approached. "Nice work," she murmured. "The vultures are circling. It's time." I nodded, making my way to the stage. The room fell silent as I took my place at the podium, all eyes on me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, "I'm sure many of you have heard the recent rumors about me and my company. Tonight, I'm here to set the record straight." I could see Richard shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "But this isn't just about clearing my name. It's about exposing a pattern of deceit and manipulation that has plagued our business community for far too long." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I caught Emily's eye, saw the conflict written on her face. "With the help of some very dedicated individuals, I've uncovered evidence of a systematic campaign of sabotage and fraud. And the man behind it all is in this very room." The tension in the air was palpable. I nodded to Tom, who started the presentation. "Richard Drake," I said, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "Stand up and face the truth." Richard's face contorted with rage as he stood. "This is preposterous. Carter, you've lost your mind." I smiled grimly. "Have I? Then perhaps you'd like to explain these emails?" I gestured to the screen behind me, where Tom was displaying Richard's incriminating correspondence. "Or maybe you'd like to address these financial records?" Another damning slide appeared. Richard's face had gone pale. This is a setup. You've fabricated all of this." "Oh, I don't think so," I countered. "But don't take my word for it. Why don't we listen to what you have to say about it yourself?" With a nod to Jessica, the room filled with Richard's own voice, crystal clear from the bugweed planted in his office. "Carter won't know what hit him. By the time we're done, his reputation will be in tatters, and we'll pick up the pieces of his company for pennies on the dollar." The room erupted into chaos. Richard lunged for the stage, his face contorted with fury. "You bastard," he shouted. "I'll destroy you for this." Security guards moved in, restraining Richard as he continued to shout threats and denials. I turned back to the stunned audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed tonight is just the tip of the iceberg. I have provided all of this evidence to the authorities, who I believe will be very interested in having a long conversation with Mr. Drake." As if on cue, the doors burst open, and a team of police officers entered the room. "Richard Drake," the lead officer announced, "you're under arrest for fraud, corporate espionage, and a host of other charges we'll be discussing down at the station." As the police led Richard away, I caught sight of Emily. She stood alone, tears streaming down her face. Our eyes met across the room, and in that moment, I saw the full weight of her regret. The room was abuzz with shocked conversations and hurried phone calls. Reporters were already clamoring for interviews, cameras flashing. Samantha appeared at my side, a fierce grin on her face. "We did it, David. We actually did it." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion wash over me. "It's not over yet," I said, "but it's a damn good start." As the night wore on, I found myself surrounded by a whirlwind of congratulations, apologies, and promises of renewed business partnerships. But through it all, my mind kept drifting back to Emily, to the look in her eyes as Richard was led away. The gala was drawing to a close when Jessica approached me, her face serious. "David, Emily's asking to speak with you. She's in the small conference room off the main hall." I hesitated, torn between my lingering anger and a desire for closure. Finally, I nodded. "All right, I'll hear what she has to say." As I made my way to the conference room, I steeled myself for whatever was to come. The final act of this drama was unfolding, and I was determined to face it head-on. I pushed open the door to the conference room, my heart pounding. Emily stood by the window, her back to me. As the door clicked shut behind me, she turned, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't even know where to begin." I stayed near the door, maintaining my distance. "The truth would be a good start, Emily." She nodded, wringing her hands. "You're right. You deserve that much, at least." She took a deep breath. "Everything I told you at the cafe was true. I wanted out, David. I realized how wrong I'd been, how much damage I'd caused. Then why didn't you come clean earlier?" I asked, my voice hard. "Why wait until tonight?" Emily's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Because I was afraid. Of Richard, of the consequences, of facing what I'd done. But seeing you up there tonight, exposing everything, I knew I couldn't hide anymore." I was about to respond when a commotion outside caught our attention. Raised voices, the sound of breaking glass. Emily and I exchanged a worried glance before rushing to the door. The scene that greeted us was chaos. Richard, who should have been in police custody, was standing in the middle of the ballroom, wild-eyed and brandishing what looked like a gun. "You think this is over?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the stunned crowd. "You think you've won, Carter?" I instinctively pushed Emily behind me, scanning the room for the others. I spotted Tom and Jessica huddled behind an overturned table, Samantha trying to usher panicked guests towards the exits. "Richard," I called out, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's over. Put the gun down." He laughed, a manic sound that sent chills down my spine. "Over? Oh no, this is just the beginning. You've ruined me, Carter. So I'm going to return the favor." He raised the gun, aiming it straight at me. Time seemed to slow down. I heard Emily's gasp behind me, saw the horrified expressions on the faces of the guests. And then, just as Richard's finger tightened on the trigger, a blur of motion caught my eye. Samantha, moving with a speed I wouldn't have thought possible, tackled Richard from the side. The gun went off, the bullet embedding itself harmlessly in the ceiling. They hit the ground hard, struggling for control of the weapon. The room erupted into pandemonium. Guests screamed and ran for the exits. I rushed forward, determined to help Samantha, but Tom beat me to it. Together, they managed to wrestle the gun away from Richard. The police, alerted by the gunshot, stormed back into the room. This time, they weren't taking any chances. Richard was quickly subdued, multiple officers pinning him to the ground as they cuffed him. As they led him away, Richard locked eyes with me one last time. "This isn't over, Carter," he spat. "You'll pay for this. You'll all pay." His threats faded as the police dragged him out of the room. I turned to Samantha, who was being checked over by paramedics. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice shaky with adrenaline. She nodded, wincing slightly. "Nothing a few bruises won't cure. Guess all those self-defense classes paid off." I clasped her shoulder, overwhelmed with gratitude. "You saved my life. I don't know how to thank you." Samantha managed a weak smile. "Let's start by making sure that bastard goes away for a very long time." As the chaos began to settle, I found myself at the center of a media frenzy. Reporters clamored for statements, cameras flashed from every direction. But amid the craziness, I caught sight of Emily, standing off to the side, looking lost and alone. I made my way over to her, ignoring the shouted questions from the press. "Emily," I said softly, "are you okay?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. "David, I'm so sorry. For everything. I never thought it would go this far." I sighed, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. "I know, Emily, but it did go this far. And now we all have to deal with the consequences." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "What happens now?" I looked around the room, at the mess of broken glass and overturned furniture, at my friends who had risked everything to help me, at the reporters still clamoring for answers. "Now," I said, turning back to Emily, "we pick up the pieces. All of us." As the night wore on and the adrenaline began to fade, I found myself sitting in a quiet corner of the ballroom, surrounded by my closest allies. Tom, Jessica, Samantha, even Lisa, who had arrived after hearing about the chaos. "I still can't believe it's over," Tom said, shaking his head in disbelief. Jessica leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. Over? David, this is just the beginning. The media's going crazy over this story. We've got a real chance to turn things around for the company now. I nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. You're right. But right now, I just want to thank all of you. I couldn't have done this without you. Samantha raised her glass in a toast to taking down the bad guys. We all clinked glasses, sharing a moment of quiet triumph. Lisa cleared her throat, drawing our attention. David, I just spoke with Emily. She's a mess. I think she really regrets everything that happened. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I know, but it's going to take time to process all of this. For all of us. Just then, a police officer approached our table. Mr. Carter, we need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Of course, officer. I'll be right there. As I prepared to leave, Tom stood up. We're coming with you, David. You're not doing this alone. I looked around at their determined faces and felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, all of you. As we made our way out of the ballroom, reporters swarmed around us, shouting questions. Mr. Carter, how long have you known about Mr. Drake's illegal activities? Is it true that your wife was involved in the scheme? What's next for your company, Mr. Carter? I held up a hand, silencing the crowd. I'll be making a full statement tomorrow. For now, all I can say is that justice has been served, and we're looking forward to moving past this difficult time. With that, we pushed through the crowd and into the waiting police car. As we drove away from the chaos, I couldn't help but feel that this was truly the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The weeks following the gala were a whirlwind of activity. I found myself juggling police interviews, press conferences, and the monumental task of rebuilding my company's reputation. One morning, as I sat in my office reviewing the latest financial reports, Jessica knocked on my door. David, you have a visitor. I looked up, surprised. Who is it? Jessica stepped aside, revealing Samantha. She walked in, a determined look on her face. Samantha, I said, standing to greet her. What brings you here? She took a seat across from me. I've been thinking, David, about everything that happened, about what Richard did to us, to others. I nodded, encouraging her to continue. I want to do more, she said firmly. I want to help other victims of corporate sabotage. And I was hoping you might want to join me in this venture. I leaned back in my chair, considering her words. What exactly did you have in mind? Samantha's eyes lit up. A consultancy. We could use our experience, our connections, to help other businesses protect themselves from people like Richard. And when necessary, we could help expose the wrongdoers. I smiled, feeling a spark of excitement. That's actually a brilliant idea, Samantha. Count me in. Just then, Tom burst into the office, his face flushed with excitement. David, you're not going to believe this. What is it, Tom? I asked, alarmed by his sudden entrance. He grinned, holding up a flash drive. I've been working on new security measures for the company, right? Well, I think I've developed a system that could revolutionize corporate cybersecurity. I stood up, intrigued. Show me. As Tom set up his laptop and began explaining his new system, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Despite everything we'd been through, my team was still innovating, still pushing forward. The day continued in a flurry of meetings and decisions. By late afternoon, I found myself in the conference room with Jessica, discussing the company's future. The latest polls show public opinion is swinging back in our favor, Jessica reported, her voice filled with optimism. And we've had several former clients reach out about renewing their contracts. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. That's great news, Jessica. And I think it's time we recognized your role in all of this. She looked at me, surprised. What do you mean? I said, smiling, that I'd like to promote you to Chief Operating Officer. You've more than earned it. Jessica's eyes widened. David, I don't know what to say. Say yes, I urged. The company needs you, Jessica. I need you. She nodded, a broad smile spreading across her face. Yes, absolutely yes. As the day drew to a close, I found myself standing by the window in my office, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the skyline. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I turned to see Lisa standing there, a hesitant smile on her face. "Lisa," I said, surprised. "Come in. Is everything okay?" She nodded, stepping into the office. "I just wanted to update you. I've been talking with Emily." I tensed slightly at the mention of my soon-to-be ex-wife's name. "Oh," Lisa sighed. She's trying, David. She's in therapy, working through her issues. And she wanted me to tell you how sorry she is. For everything." I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. "Thank you for telling me, Lisa. I hope she finds peace." Lisa smiled softly. "Me too. And I hope you know, David, that you'll always be family to me, no matter what happens with Emily." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you, Lisa. That means a lot." As Lisa left, I turned back to the window, reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fight, the victory. It had been a long, hard road, but we'd made it through. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Drinks to celebrate the new security system? The whole team's in." I smiled, texting back a quick "on my way." As I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, I felt a sense of optimism I hadn't experienced in months. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to face it. With my loyal friends by my side and new opportunities on the horizon, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. As I stepped out of the office, ready to join my team, I couldn't help but feel that this wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning, and I was ready for it. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.